welcome to the second part of a 4-part series where we are taking a look at every single Super Famicom shooter that was commercially available, to my knowledge. So let's jump in to part 2. Acrobat Mission is a port of a little-known arcade game by UPL. It has quite a few interesting ideas, such as enemies not actually being able to hurt you, but just bounce straight off them. You can also take down enemies once you die, as your ship turns into a time bomb, taking out enemies within close proximity of it. Sadly, the game looks like a poor public domain effort. The big chunky sprites look amateurish, and the lack of varied backdrops doesn't help matters. The music is also pretty bad, with some songs even being off key. Sadly, the gameplay can't save this below par shooter. But what did you expect from a game developed by Micronix?
Arms installation is complete. Good luck.
Now here is a game many people love to hate, but funnily enough, a lot but not all of the people who hate this game weren't even born when it was released. Back in 1992 when this game came out, it truly was something special. Sure, the 3D areas kind of look strange and many even make some people feel sick, but it truly was like nothing else back in the day. Even now some of the areas look beautiful, from the 3D fire stage to the underwater caverns of the 2D stage. Even the music in Axelay is epic, giving the game a real cinematic feel. Something never heard in a shooter up until that point. At the heart of Axelay, it's a fairly average but still good shooter. You choose your weapon power before each stage, allowing you to potentially have 3 hits per life, as long as it's a minor collision. Each minor collision will lose you a weapon due to a malfunction, however, a major collision will result in a lost life. A nice solution to having an energy meter in my opinion. As I said, some hate Axelay, saying it's nothing more than a gimmick. Well, while that may have been true, it sure was a cool looking gimmick and still doesn't take away from the game being a good shooter. This is Namco's own comedy parody of Galaga, Cosmo Gang the Video. It's basically Galaga but now featuring the Cosmo Gang, a bunch of characters that featured in a few Namco games. This is actually an arcade conversion, and while the arcade has more speech and better defined graphics, this home port does an excellent job of capturing the arcade spirit. If you're after something a little different than the standard shooter, then you can do a lot worse than Cosmo Gang the Video. Dezaemon appears on many systems. It's basically a shoot 'em up construction kit, but does come with a pre-built in game called Diogale. Everything you see and hear in this game was made using the construction kit. It's actually quite a powerful program for a console. The amount of detail you can pull off is mighty impressive. It's also one of the few games that uses the Super Famicom's high resolution mode as something other than a stats or title screen. Sadly these days it's hard to find this game with a working battery, so you will have to replace it should you want to actually make a game. I wish my battery was still alive. I made a killer game back in the late 90s on this. I actually prefer this version to the Saturn one. This heap of crap has probably had many a gamer crying, it's so bad. Dimension Force, or D-Force as it's commonly known, was developed by Isco, yet another developer who makes nothing but garbage. Well, actually they did make one reasonable game after 20 odd years of existence, and that was Deep Fear on the Saturn. Still, even that compared to Resident Evil was pretty bad. But not as bad as D-Force. There are 3 game modes: normal, shooting, and technical. The shooting mode only plays you through the stages that play on one plane. The technical only plays on the stages that use 2 planes. Normal, as you've guessed it, plays all stages. As you can see, the game looks bad, and I'm sure you can also hear that it's bad. In fact, everything about this game is bad. Just avoid this one. This is Hyperzone from Halken. Yeah, you know, the company that brought us Kirby. Well, back in the day, this game received terrible scores simply because idiots of the time wanted F-Zero 2 and thought this would be it. When it came out, they slagged it harshly. They said it was a terrible racing game. What a bunch of morons. This is a shooter in the same light as Space Harrier, and a pretty good one at that. It's another early title for the system, but again, another with no slowdown, and looked very impressive back when it was released. Hyperzone is far from perfect, with its sometimes comical narrow track making it impossible to avoid obstacles, and sometimes it is difficult to know where you are aiming, but besides those points, Hyperzone is pretty solid. You start the game with a basic ship with nothing more than a pea shooter weapon. After 2 races, you are awarded a new ship with a nifty blaster shot. This gets upgraded round after round, with faster and more powerful ships. That's all there is to it, a very simple but enjoyable game.
Jikkyou! Oshaberi Parodius! 張り切っていってみよう。あ、メルだよ。メルちゃん待って、全滅です。お、ナイスです。もう一丁。ナイスですね。
Here we go with the second Parodius game on the Super Famicom. This is Jikkyou Oshaberi Parodius, and believe it or not, this isn't a conversion of an arcade game. This Parodius was developed directly for the Super Famicom, then ported to the Saturn and PlayStation with more animation, colors, high quality audio and so on. But that's not to say that this Super Famicom game is bad, absolutely not. It runs with the help of the SA1 chip. The chip helps with the constant voice chattering away, as well as some pretty big enemies. Still, despite the extra help of the SA1 chip, the game still slows down quite a lot.
顔が逆転だよ。あらまあでっかいのね。メルちゃん待って。あら入っちゃったよ。全滅です。 あら入っちゃったよ。狭いよ。怖いよ。もう少しだ。頑張れ。ナイス。スピードオーバーだよ。ルーレットスタート。
Coming from developer Zoom is Phalanx, and it has Zoom's trademark look all over it. Tiny little sprites along with big massive ones, all with loads of detail in a kind of industrial look. Many people dislike Phalanx, saying that it's too difficult to see the red bullets. I have no idea what they mean. Look, there they are. Now, on the screen. Anyway, Phalanx offers nothing in the way of innovation, but does have some nice features, such as being able to store up to 3 weapon types. Each weapon can also act as a bomb of sorts, but use them wisely, because once you have used it, the weapon is lost until you pick up another power icon. As you can see, Phalanx has a unique look and some very odd slowdown to go with it. Slowdown seems to be based more upon enemy ship movement mapping than actual items on screen. There can be times when the screen is jam-packed with no slowdown, but others when there's only you and a boss with no projectiles and the game grinds to a halt. Very odd. Still, it doesn't bother me too much, and neither should it you. R-Type 3 from Irem is what you'd expect it to be. It's R-Type. Still rock solid, and it still needs to be played methodically. Knowing exactly where everything is going to come from is key to success in this game. This is quite an obscure game. Shien the Blade Chaser comes to us from a little known company, Almac Corp. This plays quite similar to the old light gun shooters before the days of Virtua Cop. Kill enemies in the background with your shuriken and close up enemies with your sai. Of course you also have magic that acts as a smart bomb. The whole atmosphere of the game just oozes fantasy. This is backed up by the excellent soundtrack composed by Akihiko Mori, who has been involved in many games over a variety of platforms, most noticeably being both the Wonder Project J games by Enix. Also known as Aero Fighter in the US, Sonic Wings is an arcade conversion. You can choose to play as 4 different countries' pilots, each having their own unique firepower and bombs. Being a video system game, it doesn't shout out originality, and to be quite frank, it's not a very nice looking game either. Still, Sonic Wings is reasonable and at least worth 1 or 2 plays. Taito loved to milk Space Invaders, and things were no different in the 90s, with this Super Famicom collection featuring the exact same game but running under 4 different designs to represent the original arcade choices. There is a basic puzzle game thrown in too, but if the truth be told, this is quite the dull package.